We are going on now to Auto Wreck. This is the poem by Carl Shapiro. And again, we have to see who was Carl Shapiro. He was simply an American in Maryland, which is on Chesapeake Bay. And, well, there's not an awful lot to say about him, except that he too was a 20th century poet. And the content of this poem will, of course, tell you that he was a 20th century poet, because he talks about an auto wreck, and the mere word that the mere fact that he uses the word auto will tell you that he is in the United States of America, where they talk about the automobile. We don't. We just talk about cars. But in America, of course, the car is a very important part of their everyday life. It's a vast country. You can understand why they are so heavily addicted to their cars. And it was also in America that the first production line construction of cars began. This is what made the Model T Ford so famous, is that everybody could afford one. Well, not everybody, but most people could afford one. And that essentially spelt out the end of the use of horses for transport. And of course, cars took over. Today, America, this massive country, has communication by railroads, but also by cars. And I can identify with this. We are here in Bloemfontein in the Free State. In order to come here today, I drove 150 kilometers. And when I finished here, I shall be driving another 150 kilometers. Be that as it may, I spend a lot of my life in cars. And I have seen many vehicle accidents, some of which are quite startling. And, you know, human beings are human beings. We don't just see a vehicle accident and drive on. We are curious. We stop. We look. And always, when I do that, I'm human. I too look at this lot. And we think, what if that had been me? I've taught a lot of people to drive. One of the questions I ask them when they are learning, let's say, for example, I tell them, we are driving along a road, there is a truck coming towards you, and your driver's front tire bursts. What action must you take? Answer, you can take no action. You are going to die because you are going to go head on into the truck. I've had that happen to me, fortunately, when there was no other vehicle approaching. And I know very well you are utterly helpless. You are going to veer across the road, and if something is coming towards you, you are going to hit it head on. You can't stop. So, this poem means a lot to me. It sets me thinking as well. Let's go through it. Shall we read it together? Auto Wreck by Carl Shapiro. Its quick, soft silver bell beating, beating, and down the dark one ruby flare pulsing out, red light like an artery. The ambulance at top speed floating down past beacons and illuminated clocks, wings in a heavy curve, dips down and breaks speed, entering the crowd. The doors leap open, emptying light. Stretchers are laid out, the mangled lifted and stowed into the little hospital. Then the bell, breaking the hush, tolls once, and the ambulance with its terrible cargo rocking, slightly rocking, moves away as the doors, an afterthought, are closed. We are deranged, walking among the cops who sweep glass and are large and composed. One is still making notes under the light. One with a bucket douches ponds of blood into the street and gutter. One hangs lanterns on the wrecks that cling, empty husks of locusts to iron poles. Our throats were tight as tourniquets. Our feet were bound with splints, but now, like convalescents, intimate and gauche, we speak through sickly smiles and worn with the stubborn saw of common sense, the grim joke and the banal resolution. The traffic moves around with care, but we remain, touching a wound that opens to our richest horror. Already old, the question, who shall die, becomes unspoken. Who is innocent? For death in war is done by hands. Suicide has cause, and stillbirth logic. And cancer, simple as a flower, blooms. But this invites the occult mind, cancels our physics with a sneer, and spatters all we know of denouement across the expedient and wicked stones. Very clever, very well written. Let's take a look at what he's actually saying here, going back to the first stanza. It's a long stanza. You see there, he is describing the arrival and the departure of the ambulance. And here he's giving a very clear picture of what goes on at a car crash. Here you've got the ambulance arriving, and already there are policemen on the scene. Okay, there are authorities there. There are flares warning the other cars there's something wrong ahead. I am sure that those of you watching this today have seen scenes like this before. I've seen them on the TV. I've seen many of them in real life. They happen. So what happens? The ambulance arrives, right, comes screaming in, top speed, of course, got to be in a hurry. That's a very good thing to do. I say that if the ambulance that loaded, I don't know how many of you remember when Lady Diana was killed in that tunnel under the Seine in Paris. Instead of going snatch and run, the ambulance men first tried to stabilize her. Possibly, if she had been taken directly to a hospital, she'd have survived. But I don't know. Once again, it's one of these many questions that are raised at these auto wreck sites. Who is going to die? Who's going to live? Could they have been saved, the ones that died? Very seldom can we get definite answers to those questions. But here the ambulance pitches up, and then of course you've got the bell, which it describes as tolling. Now when a bell tolls, that is in fact for a funeral or for a mournful occasion. The church bell tolls. There was that famous movie that I saw many years ago. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Because all of us one day are going to die. We can't stop that. All we can do is to prepare for it, I believe. And here we've got the ambulance then drives away, and somebody, as the ambulance pulls away, somebody reaches out and closes the doors. And then, what do people do? They walk around, deranged. Everybody's looking at what's going on. And walking among the cops. Cops, please notice that. A deliberately colloquial term for a policeman. But it's so appropriate there. Who sweep glass, okay? Large, composed, still making notes. One of them is now washing the blood away. One is busy putting up lanterns. It's at night, this. And it's so that other people can see there's something wrong there. All right? And we move on. Our throats, tight as tourniquets. Okay, it's a shock. When people go into shock, it has funny effects on them. Their vision blurs. Okay, you are worried, you are stressed. That's exactly what happened to me some years ago when I was on the road from De Wetsdorp to Weppene, and we were the first people onto this horrible, horrible scene where a car had hit the rear axle of a truck. The car was doing 190 at the time. Needless to say, the occupants in the car were killed. And when I looked into that car and saw this, I just turned away swearing. It was a shock. It's a terrible shock. So here, the people are shocked, in a state of fear. Their feet, it says, bound with splints. Splints are, of course, things that hold broken bones in position. And in this case, they were not literally bound with splints. But they were unable to move. And now they are able to talk and walk and move around again. Okay, and you notice here, this is typically South African, by the way, not really American. The grim joke. We South Africans, because we are generally exposed to so many hard scenes, we tend to make nasty jokes about things where we should not really be joking about them. It's just the way we are. It's a national habit of ours. And the banal resolution, you shrug, oh, well, it could have been anybody. Oh, well, glad this wasn't me, da-da-da-da-da. Traffic moves around with care, but we remain touching a wound that opens our richest horror. And people do stare at traffic smashes. There was a taxi that rolled early last year outside De Wetsdorp. Once again, I was on the road and saw the aftermath of that accident. I'm a human. I climbed out and spent about half an hour walking around, and I took photographs. I'm not ashamed of that. A lot of people were doing the same thing. It was a major event in the history of De Wetsdorp. So, yes, we do look and watch. But the reason I do this is also to learn. Was there a lesson that I can learn from this? Could I, if I encounter a similar situation, could I have prevented it? In that particular situation, I don't think so. I think if I had been the driver of the taxi, that would have been me. But so it is. But now we go on to this resolution here at the bottom. Already old, the question, who shall die? And now he goes on in this poem to say, he talks about death in war. It happens. A soldier takes a soldier's chances. That's been a motto for thousands of years. If you are a soldier, you must be prepared to die. But, and he says that's not a particular concern. I mean, nobody's startled when soldiers die. I mean, that's what they accept. That's a risk of their career. And then he talks about suicide has cause. Yeah, some people will kill themselves. Stillbirth, that's when a baby is born dead. There's some logic to it, he says. And cancer, yes, it happens. We can understand that. But an accident is unanticipated. It's something that just happens. Before we realize it, it's happened. And that is what he's saying here. And this poem really has great meaning to me. I can identify with it unbelievably well.